Even though Bikini Bottom is colorful and carefree, it's also a land full of hopeless addicts. Let's dig into that. First up on our list is Hooky, an episode in which SpongeBob and Patrick quite literally get hooked on a life-threatening habit. It all starts with Mr. Krabs bursting into the Krusty Krab like a psycho man on a mission, yelling about the hooks being back. Like, the guy seems crazy. Nobody pays him any attention, though. The customers just brush him off, and SpongeBob's totally confused by how manic he is. Mr. Krabs tells him that the hooks are a huge danger. If you get caught on one, you're going straight to the surface, where you'll either get eaten or end up in a gift shop. Holy! So SpongeBob tries to shake it off and heads back to work. That's when Patrick shows up at the window all excited because he thinks a carnival's come to town. So SpongeBob decides to take a break from his shift for once and check it out with him. But when they get there, SpongeBob's hit with the realization that this carnival is actually a bunch of fishing hooks hanging around. Exactly what that psycho at the restaurant was screaming about. But Patrick doesn't care about the warnings and actually hooks himself, shooting up towards the surface like he's about to die. So SpongeBob's totally losing it, thinking Patrick's basically just ended himself, which we all know would happen at some point, let's be real, the guy is a mess. But Patrick just jumps off and floats back down like it's no big deal, and tells SpongeBob to join the fun. Despite Mr. Krabs' warning, SpongeBob eventually gives in and starts playing with the hooks too, and SpongeBob gets hooked instantly. He's really starting to seem like an actual addict. Back at the Krusty Krab, Squidward's temporarily filling in as the fry cook, and he's doing a terrible job as always. The customers hate his sad attempts at making Krabby Patties. So Mr. Krabs storms out of his office to see what's going on, only to find out SpongeBob's on a break doing who knows what. Who the heck allowed that yellow jerk to take a second to himself? Mr. Krabs tells Squidward no one has taken a break since the chum famine of '59. Realizing SpongeBob ditched work, Mr. Krabs goes on a mission to find him. Mr. Krabs catches SpongeBob and Patrick at Fish Hook's party playing on the dangerous hooks, and he's shocked at SpongeBob's disobedience. He scolds them, reminding them that getting caught by one of these hooks means getting turned into a can of tuna, or worse. I don't really know what's worse than that. SpongeBob and Patrick feel bad and promise Mr. Krabs they'll never mess around with the hooks again. Only, they're in too deep now. Like actual addicts, they have no chance at ever breaking free of that shiny, sharp hook. The next day, SpongeBob resists the hooks, but Patrick shows up and tempts SpongeBob to break his promise. I mean, it's just one hook. What's the worst that could happen? That's the thinking of a true addict. At first, SpongeBob resists, but when he sees a hook in the middle of the street, he can't help himself. I mean, he can quit anytime he wants, right? So he starts playing on it again, but this time, he gets stuck. Like, really stuck. Like 10 minutes to becoming tuna stuck. Panicking, SpongeBob runs back to the Krusty Krab with the hook still attached to his pants. He thinks it's only a matter of time before he gets killed. SpongeBob tries to hide the hook from Mr. Krabs, even though it's literally right there, but eventually he fesses up. He has a problem. He's addicted to Hook. Mr. Krabs tells him there's only one way out. Take off his pants. Easy enough. But Pearl and his friends are visiting the Krusty Krab, and SpongeBob's mortified at the thought of stripping in front of them. I mean, he's a fry cook with an addiction problem, not a stripper. But he has no choice. The hook rips off not only his pants, but also his underwear, sending him flying into the door of the Krusty Krab, naked, while Pearl and her friends laugh hysterically at SpongeBob No Pants. SpongeBob, humiliated, runs home. Meanwhile, Squidward returns with SpongeBob's underwear, revealing that Mr. Krabs, Squidward, and Pearl set the whole thing up to teach him a lesson about the dangers of hooks. Wait, what the heck? That's messed up! There's like no reason to force SpongeBob through addiction just to teach him not to get addicted. That's wild. The final shot sees Patrick getting dropped off at home, stuck inside a tuna can, asking for a can opener. I'm not going near that one. Hooked is a pretty clear example of how clueless and naive SpongeBob can be, which would explain how he's so easily swept up into violence in our next episode, Karate Choppers. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Sandy going at it, practicing their karate moves like they have any clue what they're doing.
Double overhand squirrel knot.
Once they're done pawing at one another, Sandy basically threatens SpongeBob, telling him that she's going to sneak up on him and fight him the next day, which Which is weird, by the way, to threaten your friends like that, but whatever. So fast forward to the bargain mart, and boom, they're at it again. Can't keep their hands off one another. They're addicted to the pain. Sandy's got the upper hand this time, and she decides to go full psycho mode. She pulls out SpongeBob's tongue, grabs a bottle of volcano sauce, and basically says, surrender or burn. Now that's not even karate, that's just serial killer stuff. SpongeBob freaks out when he pictures a little face on the hot sauce drop and gives up instantly. And to be fair, so would I if a psycho squirrel was trying to burn my tongue out. So now Sandy has been so unhinged that the next day at the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob's all paranoid, thinking she could be anyone or anything. He's on edge, jumping at everything, and it's seriously messing with his ability to work, which is basically all he lives for, because it's not like his life has any other meaning. At one point, he straight up assaults a customer, which, of course, Mr. Krabs is not too thrilled about. But probably not because of the attack, more because of the court fees he'll have to pay to shut it down. So when Mr. Krab asks him what the heck is going on, SpongeBob explains that it's all because of karate. They're so addicted to just hurting one another that it's affecting him psychologically. Welcome to the world of addiction. But Mr. Krabs is not having any of that. He basically warns SpongeBob to knock off the karate or get fired. So now SpongeBob's trying to lay low, hoping to save his job and his mental well-being. But she can't let him have a second of peace. She just shows up and starts another karate fight right in the Krusty Krab, not even thinking for a second about randomly assaulting a guy in his workplace. It's second nature to her now. So now SpongeBob's desperately trying to tell her about Mr. Krabs' ultimatum, but she's like, nah, let me beat you up real quick, bro. When Mr. Krabs catches them, he fires SpongeBob on the spot. SpongeBob bursts into tears and runs around like a maniac, and then, finally, Sandy feels a little guilty and tells Mr. Krabs it's all her fault, begging him to give SpongeBob his job back. Why didn't you think about that before? You just ignored SpongeBob entirely. Mr. Krabs agrees to give the job back, but says they have to kick this karate addiction because it's clearly ruining SpongeBob's life, and he doesn't have much of a life to begin with. So they both try to give up on the karate thing. They do everything they can to distract themselves and go cold turkey, but everything they do just reminds them of karate. They've hit one another so many times they're basically brain dead. SpongeBob slices up some bologna with a karate chop, and that's it. They just lose all control. They're karate chopping everything in sight and making a bunch of sandwiches in the process, having the time of their lives. I'll be real, I thought for sure they were gonna do the other thing to get rid of their pent-up frustration, so I guess this is Nickelodeon trying to play it safe. With violence! Just when they're surrounded by a massive heap of sandwiches, Mr. Krabs shows up and it's pretty clear they've broken their promise. SpongeBob comes clean telling Mr. Krabs he just can't help himself. He's an addict, and to go ahead and fire him. But instead of firing him, Mr. Krabs has a different idea. He puts them to work at the Krusty Krab, forcing SpongeBob and Sandy to use their karate skills to speed up Krabby Patty production. They're slicing and assembling ingredients like pros, and the customers love it. Mr. Krabs is rolling in the money, and Squidward, well, he just hates everything as usual. That's just Squidward, the guy with the constant wedgie up his butt. But I guess at least he's covered up. In ripped pants, SpongeBob not only exposes himself, but he also becomes addicted to people laughing at him. Whatever works, man. The episode opens with SpongeBob and Sandy chilling at Goo Lagoon. Gary the Lobster comes up and he's like, hey, you guys want to lift some weights? Because he has nothing better to do, obviously. I guess that's his addiction. SpongeBob isn't in the mood for it, but Sandy definitely is, so he tags along anyway. While Sandy and Larry are pulling off these insanely impressive weightlifting moves, SpongeBob decides to go for the easier weight, lifting a stick with 2 marshmallows on the ends, but he somehow finds a way to screw this up too. He rips his pants right open, exposing himself to the world, and of course, everyone finds it absolutely hysterical. Now, SpongeBob knows he can just be humiliated or he can lean into it. So of course, he leans into it, making one ripped pant joke after another. And they actually work, which is kind of weird for SpongeBob. Like a desperate attention whore, he gets hooked on the addiction, needing more and more. The crowd gets bored of the jokes, though, which SpongeBob either does not notice or, more likely, does not care. He just keeps trying to make jokes to get that laugh, even going as far as pretending to drown for the sake of a joke. Well, you know what? These guys will tolerate a lot, but they draw the line at a fake drowning. Everyone, especially Sandy, is horrified that SpongeBob would do something so appalling. They basically tell him to go away and then get on with their own fun stuff. But still, SpongeBob needs the laugh. He has nothing left in his life, and all of his new jokes are ignored by the residents. At one point, he literally tears off his pants, but they gain a personality and even they think he's a loser and run away. SpongeBob is super depressed, and he finds some other people who made similarly embarrassing mistakes, and he starts to realize that he went too far. He needs to do something to show the town he's not a total jerk, and he does it in the most jerky way imaginable. He sings it. SpongeBob sings a heartfelt song about losing his friends because of his ripped pants jokes.
Now I learned a lesson I won't soon forget. So listen and you won't regret. Be true to yourself, don't miss your chance, and you won't end up like the fool who ripped his pants.
Sandy forgives him because she's a dunce and all it takes is one song to make her brain hemorrhage or something. But right at the end, as he's singing Larry's shorts, SpongeBob rips his underwear, embarrassing him once again. So the cycle will only continue for old SpongeBob, who cannot shake his addiction to laughter. Which can also apply to the whole of Bikini Bottom, who are constantly getting addicted to sketchy stuff, like in Best Frenemies. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs doing what he loves best, counting his money, when he notices that the Krusty Krab's profits are down, so of course he freaks out. It turns out that nobody's been ordering drinks for days, and Mr. Krabs is totally confused. The drinks are just as bad as usual, so why the turn down? Well, SpongeBob tells him that everyone, including him, Squidward, and even Pearl, is drinking the new trendy drink called a kelp shake. It's the latest big thing, and it's so popular that no one's bothering to buy any of the crappy drinks from the Krusty Krab anymore. They're on that good stuff. Whatever's in it, they're addicted to the taste. So Mr. Krabs loses it and immediately bans all outside drinks from the restaurant just to mess with his rivals and his customers. But of course, the customers just leave without paying for their food. Good for them, honestly. Screw this guy. It turns out there's a whole kelp shake restaurant right next door, and seriously, how the heck did nobody notice this thing being built? You'd have to be blind or drunk to not see it. Anyways, Mr. Krabs is convinced that Plankton is behind the whole thing, so he storms over to the chum bucket to confront him. But Plankton is also pretty brain-rotted and has no clue about the kelp shake craze. He's just as confused about the whole thing, but now they're both worried because if these kelp shake joints keep popping up, both of their businesses could go under. The people of Bikini Bottom are hopelessly hooked on this stuff. So even though they have this unrequited love thing going on and they're in total denial about how they just want to get together, Mr. Krabs and Plankton reluctantly team up to steal a kelp shake and figure out what it's made of. They come up with all these wacky plans to steal the shake, most of which take advantage of Plankton's tiny size while Krabs basically does nothing, but none of them actually work, probably because Krabs was being lazy actually. After a whole day of failing, they're both frustrated and bickering until SpongeBob, of all people, suggests the most obvious solution. Why don't they just, I don't know, buy one? Yeah, why don't you put your money down and think for a second, bro? Mr. Krabs isn't thrilled about the idea of spending money, but Plankton pushes him to buy a kelp shake. Come to think of it, Krabs has a textbook addiction to money. They take it back to the chum bucket where Karen analyzes it, and it turns out it's mostly just kelp juice, which sounds pretty normal but also disgusting, right? They both taste it and, okay, it's delicious. Maybe they get the whole thing, but they're totally ignoring Karen, though, who's trying to warn them about the second, more dangerous ingredient, which could be anything, honestly. It has to be something salty and addictive and warm and weirded myself out. So as Mr. Krabs and Plankton head out to grab more kelp shakes, they run into SpongeBob, who's completely freaking out. He's grown this weird green fuzz all over his body, and it's pretty gross. It's like moldy puberty or something. SpongeBob tells them that all the Kelpshake restaurants have been shut down and he runs off crying. So, okay, something is seriously wrong here. The residents are hooked on something super shady and sinister. Mr. Krabs and Plankton head over to one of the closed Kelpshake spots where they see these hazmat guys draining something from the building. The workers mention that the second ingredient in the shakes is highly toxic and should not be consumed, which, to be fair, can be said about every fast food place in the world. But before Mr. Krabs and Plankton can process this, the same green fuzz starts growing all over their bodies too. I guess this is the consequence of ingesting unknown drugs. Mr. Krabs and Plankton quickly get over the whole toxic fuzz thing. Plankton decides to go back to trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula, and they end up chasing each other around, laughing about how good it feels to be back to their old schemes. It's actually kind of a cute ending, even if it does just totally ignore the basic premise of the episode and doesn't explain what the heck they consumed. I guess sometimes it's better to not know. Case in point, Just One Bite, an episode where Squidward becomes a totally dedicated addict to the Krabby Patty. The episode begins at the Krusty Krab with Squidward doing his usual "I wish I was dead, oh I'm so miserable, look how miserable I am" thing. He hands a customer this massive heart attack abomination king-sized ultra Krabby Supreme with mayo, and when the guy digs in, Squidward cringes in disgust, which, yeah. But it turns out he's never actually eaten a Krabby Patty, he just decided he hates them. Spongebob, of course, can't believe it. I mean, only psychos and registered offenders don't love Krabby Patties. So he starts bugging Squidward, telling him that the only people who don't like Krabby Patties are the ones who've never tried one. Which just isn't true, but okay. Squidward, just desperate for SpongeBob to leave him alone, finally takes a teeny bite. And it's the worst thing he's ever eaten. He hates it so much that the half-eaten patty is buried in the ground like it's some kind of funeral. If it's like the burger places in the real world, that stuff is so loaded with chemicals it'll still be the same in 400 years. But once SpongeBob leaves, Squidward digs up that same patty like he's a grave robber and devours it, realizing that he actually loves Krabby Patties. Like, loves them. Wants to marry one. Wants to Anyway, the problem is, he's already told SpongeBob he hates them, so now he's messed up. He's hopelessly addicted, but he doesn't want SpongeBob to know about it because he thinks SpongeBob will never leave him alone. So Squidward sets out on a secret quest to sneak more Krabby Patties without anybody catching him with his hand in the Krabby jar. His first plan is to place an order for some elaborate Krabby Patty thing with a bunch of weird-ass toppings, hoping SpongeBob will just make it and leave it lying around. But when SpongeBob finishes the order and calls out for the non-existent customer, nobody claims it. Damn! Didn't think about that, huh? Squidward tries to get it, but because there's no customer, SpongeBob decides to eat it himself. Try again, buddy. So Squidward goes full trash mode, trying to grab a half-eaten patty from the garbage. But just as he's about to take a bite, SpongeBob catches him and burns the patty because a Krabby Patty deserves better than the trash. How burning it to ash is better, I have no clue. I'm pretty sure SpongeBob is in some kind of cult. Also, where the heck did he get a damn flamethrower? That night, Squidward's obsession takes over, and he dreams about Krabby Patties, even marrying one in his sleep. Told you, right? But luckily, he wakes up before the honeymoon where he eats his new wife. Look, it's weird. He sneaks back to the Krusty Krab in the middle of the night, tiptoeing past SpongeBob's house. He gets inside, makes his way to the Krabby Patty vault, knowing that inside there, he has his biggest dream waiting for him. Yup. A whole vault full of stacks and stacks of ready-to-eat patties. And just as he's about to indulge all his wildest dreams, guess who shows up? Yep, this little yellow jerk. He's there at 3 a.m. to count sesame seeds. Who the heck knows why, since they're already on the buns. Just a little weirdo, addicted to the feeling of work. But SpongeBob starts putting the pieces together. Squidward, the open vault, a patty behind his back. Probably something gross going on downstairs because of the dream. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. When SpongeBob finally asks if Squidward likes Krabby Patties, Squidward breaks down and confesses his love for them, scarfing down patty after patty in a desperate, addicted frenzy. This guy is hooked. He's gonna spend the rest of his life craving this fat-filled snack. SpongeBob warns him not to overdo it, that people who do, well, it's too late. Squidward eats so many that his thighs swell up and explodes. Don't do Krabby Patties, kids. You will die. The episode wraps up with Squidward being wheeled off to the hospital, just a head now, while the paramedic casually jokes about how he remembers his first Krabby Patty. Yeah, bro, but you're not a head. I mean, at least you have half a brain. Unlike Spongebob, who's so addicted on playing with a paddle ball that Gary ends up running away just to get food in Have You Seen This Snail? So the episode opens with Spongebob going home with some snail food for Gary when he sees a package containing a Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy paddle ball set. Now, for most of us, we would probably burn that, but here's the kicker. There's this crazy dirty bubble challenge that comes with it, which is not as fun as it sounds, by the way. He's got to hit the paddle ball. Let me just work out the math here. 29,998,559,671,349 times in a row. Holy. But of course, Spongebob is all in, completely obsessed with this challenge from the get-go because he's Spongebob. He gets so addicted to this stupid game that he forgets to feed Gary. Bro! And when Gary tries to remind him, Spongebob gets all snappy, telling Gary to leave him the hell alone. He's playing with his ball. So poor Gary's just starving to death, and SpongeBob's too addicted to his game to notice. Gary even tries all these different ways to get his attention, but nope. SpongeBob is in way too deep. This is what happens, by the way, when people get hooked on heroin or something. Finally, after being ignored one too many times, Gary just realizes it's pointless and decides to leave. But SpongeBob keeps going, man. Eventually, Patrick shows up, and only then does SpongeBob realize that he's forgotten to feed Gary for an entire week. A week! So realizing that he's been a total jerk, SpongeBob rushes to get some food and calls out for Gary, but Gary's gone, man! Actually, he's not just gone. Gary wanted SpongeBob to know what a jerk he was, so he left a note saying he ran away. Now SpongeBob is devastated, and he and Patrick start searching everywhere for Gary, but come on, Patrick is not going to help you find a damn thing. Think, man. While all this is happening, Gary's wandering through some random town, and an old lady picks him up, mistaking him for another snail, which is low-key racist, but whatever. SpongeBob and Patrick kick it up a notch, searching all over the place, putting up posters, everything, but they keep missing Gary by just this much. He's too busy getting treated nicely by this old woman, who's overfeeding him. Now, at first, it's kind of nice. She's giving him all this food. She's nice. It's a little much, but nice enough. Then it gets weird. Gary notices a closet full of broken snail shells and realizes this woman is nuts. She's not feeding him to be nice. She's fattening him up to eat him. The snails in the portrait on her wall literally yell, "Run!" So Gary makes a break for it. Whole, chase scene, action movie stuff. The old woman's throwing cookies like weapons, and eventually Gary rolls out of there and hides in an alley. But just when it seems like the old psycho is about to find him, one of the tough gangster snails shows up, and Gary shoves him in front of her. Wait, what? Jeez, Gary, talk about ruthless. She mistakes the tough snail for Ms. Tuftsy and takes him instead. So now Gary's free, but he did basically just kill another snail to do it, so yikes. SpongeBob is about to give up. He goes outside all sad, thinking he's lost Gary forever. But then, like magic, Gary shows up. They have this super sweet reunion, and SpongeBob promises to be a better pet owner. He's kicked his addiction to balls, or whatever he was doing before. He takes Gary home, all excited to finally feed him, but Gary's like, nope, I'm full. Because, the old lady overfed him big time. Well, at least he was treated with some respect by somebody. In our next episode, Squid on Strike, Squidward encourages SpongeBob to go on strike for better conditions, only to realize that SpongeBob is a chronic workaholic. The episode opens with Mr. Krabs having one of his usual money freakouts because profits at the Krusty Krab are slightly lower than usual. So he does what any second-rate business person would do. He charges his employees for everything, talking, chewing, even existing. That's got a price too. Squidward is absolutely not having any of this and convinces SpongeBob that they should go on strike. But because he's SpongeBob, SpongeBob has no idea what a strike is and just gets super upset when Mr. Krabs fires him. But Squidward doesn't care. He tells SpongeBob that the strike will get them their jobs back and more. What that more is, let your imagination go wild, I guess. So Squidward and SpongeBob are now on strike, and Squidward tells SpongeBob to throw his hat on the ground as a protest, but SpongeBob can't bring himself to do that because it turns out that he is addicted to his job. He doesn't want to get rid of his damn hat. He loves his hat. So Squidward ends up getting a ticket for littering from the police instead, because the police in Bikini Bottom are basically unemployed. Next up, Squidward makes a protest sign that says Krusty Krab unfair, but SpongeBob kinda low-key hates the tone of that. His sign says Krusty Krab funfair, which makes the restaurant even more popular. So Squidward adapts again. He tries to get SpongeBob to chant slogans against Mr. Krabs, but SpongeBob is completely oblivious to what they mean. While SpongeBob's shouting this, he catches the attention of a teenage fan who he thinks is a living legend. Now, why any teenager is obsessing over a fry cook, I really don't know what kind of kink that is. But instead of joining the strike, the kid runs inside to try to take SpongeBob's job, which is actually more messed up. Squidward gives a speech to the whole town, but his words only make people super hungry, so they trample over him to get into the Krusty Krab. Seriously, these guys are useless. So Mr. Krabs obviously comes out to rub it in their face, bragging about how the strike is helping his business. But now SpongeBob feels really bold. His balls have never been bigger, so he tells this rich dude straight up that they'll strike forever if his unfair pay cuts don't stop. Well, good for him, but the word forever sends Squidward into a panic because he suddenly realizes what he's gotten himself into. Striking forever next to SpongeBob? Okay, maybe death isn't so bad. Squidward is so messed up about that he can't sleep. He rushes to the Krusty Krab to beg Krabs for his job back, but Krabs is already begging Squidward and SpongeBob to come back because these kids suck. Teenagers don't belong here. Squidward is feeling pretty smug at this point and starts negotiating their terms for coming back. But while Squidward negotiates, SpongeBob spends the entire night literally taking apart the Krusty Krab. God damn it, SpongeBob. When Squidward and Mr. Krabs arrive, they find the restaurant in complete ruins, with SpongeBob proudly standing among the wreckage like he just nailed it. Mr. Krabs loses it. He's so mad that he falls to pieces, and to pay for the damages, he declares that SpongeBob and Squidward will have to work for him forever. I think I'd rather take the pay cut. SpongeBob's all excited, finally understanding what forever means, while Squidward just sinks into despair, realizing there'll be skeletons still working at the Krusty Krab for eternity. It's a job at least, even if it is working with SpongeBob. But then in Chocolate with Nuts, SpongeBob and Patrick try to make their own business, only to get addicted to the thrill of the sale. If only they could make one. The episode opens with SpongeBob getting this fancy magazine in the mail called Fancy Living Digest. It's all about rich people and their swanky, over-the-top lives, and of course, SpongeBob and Patrick immediately want in on that lifestyle. Food, money, fancy stuff? Yeah, they're all over it. Squidward shows up and snatches the magazine because it was actually his. And when SpongeBob and Patrick ask him how people actually get rich, Squidward just tells them they're entrepreneurs and sell stuff. I guess he doesn't know about OnlyFans and all that modern stuff. But then I don't think any of us need to see a naked sponge. SpongeBob and Patrick get super excited and decide to become entrepreneurs too, by selling chocolate bars. Because that can't fail, right? Well, it turns out that selling chocolate door-to-door isn't as easy as they thought. The first house they knock on belongs to this guy, Tom. Tom is a psychopath and an addict. When he hears the word chocolate, he just goes completely nuts, screaming, "Chocolate!" at the top of his lungs, chasing them down the street. Genuinely unhinged behavior. The guy is messed in the head, but they get away from him. At their next stop, SpongeBob and Patrick fall for a con artist who blatantly tricks them into buying candy bar carrying bags. And not just once, he sells them extra bags to carry the first set of bags. If they fall for that, their business is cooked before they even get started. They try to sell some chocolate to this other lady, but SpongeBob's so tangled up with all these useless bags that she slams the door in their faces. And then, as if that's not bad enough, Tom pops up again and chases them, yelling about chocolate. Seriously, I don't even know what to say about this guy. So, SpongeBob and Patrick sit down at a diner and brainstorm some new strategies. Now, Patrick suggests getting naked. Oh god, here comes the OnlyFans stuff. But SpongeBob says they should save that for when they sell real estate. I'm gonna be real with you guys, I have no idea what that means. I don't think I really want to find out. So after they've worked out their weird kinks, they decide to just do what the con artist did and be super nice to their customers. Patrick tries it out by telling the next customer, "I love you," which, he deserved to have the door slammed in his face for that one. Then they try another guy who refuses to buy chocolate because it made him obese as a kid, so Patrick does the totally normal thing of buying the guy's childhood obesity photo. I'm actually low-key disturbed by this whole thing. I don't fully get it. So by this point, it's obvious that the two are addicted to the selling life, but SpongeBob realizes they're getting distracted and need to focus more. Patrick takes that literally and freaks out the next customer by intensely staring him down. It's intense. "You're selling chocolate, dude. We don't need to eye people down. Calm down." Finally, they see an ad for barnacle chips, and they decide the key to selling is stretching the truth. So they make wild promises telling this ancient woman that her mom, who's literally just a spine propped up, that the chocolate will make you immortal if you rub it on your skin. So the mom, the husk of spine, is thrilled by it, but the daughter, But it works, so they keep coming up with ridiculous lies about their chocolate. Eventually, they get so into it that they wrap themselves in bandages and pretend they're in desperate need of an operation, which is messed up, but you gotta do what you gotta do. But when they try this routine on one customer, he's actually worse off than them and selling chocolate to pay for his own medical bills, which is, horrible luck, because anyone with half a brain could tell these two morons are getting taken for a ride. SpongeBob and Patrick spend all the money they've made to buy chocolate from him, and it turns out the guy was the same con artist in disguise scamming them again. What a shock. So now they're completely broke and about to give up when they suddenly get cornered by Tom one last time. This guy. But instead of chasing them, he actually buys all their chocolate. What?
Thank you for your patronage.
SpongeBob and Patrick made a fortune, and they use it to rent out a fancy restaurant for a double date with the old woman and her spine mom. Squidward sees them and is completely shocked. So am I. That woman is a column of spine. What is she going to do? Not sure I want to know, actually.